They say that every child deserves a parent, but not every parent deserves a child. This statement couldn't be truer in today's case. Instead of seeing his children as tiny humans who needed his protection, Mick Philpott saw them as his personal cash cows that brought in benefits from the government. His greed blinded him from their humanity in the worst way possible. He was fame-hungry, narcissistic, and diagnosed as a psychopath who made everyone's life around him a living hell. In this video, we'll look at how Philpott and his accomplices took the lives of 6 young children and what drove them to do this heinous act. Let's get started. Mick Philpott was born in 1956 in Derby, England. He was notorious for fathering 17 children with multiple women, and if you thought he had so many children because he loves them, you would sadly be mistaken. You see, he had practically no nurturing qualities. In fact, he was an extremely violent and unpredictable man. His toxic pattern of behavior with women and children started with his first relationship. When he was 19, he charmed a 15-year-old named Kim Hill, and they began dating shortly after. In the beginning, Kim saw Philpott as an ideal partner, but it didn't take long before he suddenly became abusive in every way you can think of. His violence was so uncontrollable that he even started beating her in public. In one incident at a pub, Philpott struck Kim across the mouth with a pool cue. Needless to say, she started bleeding severely, but no one dared to intervene or tried to help her. He would use any excuse he could find to harm her. For example, once Philpott broke her arm and fractured her kneecap with a hammer when she paid too much attention to a baby she had been minding. As a British Army member, he would baselessly accuse her of infidelity when he returned from postings and physically assault her. He also shot Kim in the groin with a crossbow one time because he felt her dress had been too short. Kim, still in school, often lied about the cause of her injuries to protect Philpott. After 2 years of abuse, in July 1978, Kim plucked up the courage to send Philpott a breakup letter. In response, Philpott went AWOL from the army and broke into Kim's home. He attacked her in bed, stabbing her 27 times with a 9-inch knife. According to Kim, he told her menacingly, "If I can't have you, no one else will." When Kim's mother intervened, Philpott stabbed her 11 times. Both Kim and her mother barely survived the attack. Despite being badly injured, her mother, who was a nurse, crawled to a phone and raised the alarm. Paramedics arrived to find Philpott on the stairs, still holding the bloody knife. He told them, "I wouldn't bother. She's a goner. I done a good job on her." Kim actually died twice in the ambulance and on the operating table as surgeons battled to save her life. Philpott had slit her stomach open and stabbed her on the back, arms, and legs. She suffered collapsed lungs and a punctured bladder, kidney, and liver. During the trial, he lied and implied he stabbed her in self-defense. But all the evidence showed otherwise. Philpott was found guilty of attempted murder and grievous bodily harm. He was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison, but was released after serving just 3 years and 2 months. According to records, this early release was due to his good behavior. Needless to say, he received nothing more than a slap on the wrist and had absolutely no incentive to change his twisted ways, as we'll soon see. While in prison, he sent Kim letters, expressing remorse and even proposing to marry her upon his release. This horrific attack left Kim traumatized, and she is still receiving counseling 4 decades later. Recalling her hellish life with Philpott, Kim added, "Do not say no to Mick Philpott. You don't say no to him. He doesn't understand the word. After his release from prison in 1986, Philpott married Pamela Lomax. They had 3 children together, and he continued his abusive behavior. Pamela was too afraid to report him, knowing what had happened to his previous partner, Kim. She prayed that he would move on to someone else, which is what he did. In 1993, Philpott, then 37, began a relationship with a 14-year-old girl named Heather Keogh. Pamela left him after discovering the affair. The teenage Heather ran away from her parents to be with him on her 16th birthday, and they had 2 sons. Philpott was abusive towards her, even beating her for not having a girl. He even taught his older sons to be violent against Heather. Philpott wanted Heather to produce more children, but she did not conceive again. She was often punished by being locked outside the house in the garden, and told police Philpott once held a knife to her throat when she tried to leave him. Eventually, she climbed over the fence and escaped him. Heather was forced to temporarily abandon her children before regaining custody after a long court battle. She said that Philpott was a Jekyll and Hyde character, charming when they first met, but later violent. In 2000, Philpott met 19-year-old Marie Duffy. She was a single teenage mother who had recently left an abusive relationship. Philpott, she said, became her guardian angel. They moved in together shortly after. He took on responsibility for her son and proposed to her in hospital after the birth of their first child, Jade. The following year, he also began a relationship with Lisa Willis, a 16-year-old orphan who also happened to be a single mother. She became his mistress and moved in with him and Mairead. Perhaps because of Philpott's domineering presence, Lisa and Mairead became very close. They regularly confided in each other, and Lisa said she had treated Mairead's children as her own. There's clearly a pattern here. All 3 women in Philpott's life had been teenagers when they met him. They had effectively been groomed while they were vulnerable. Philpott married Mairead in May 2003, with Lisa as the bridesmaid. From that year onwards, Philpott lived with both women and had 11 children in a 3-bedroom council house. Both women worked while he remained unemployed, collecting their earnings and government benefits. Philpott actively tried to have more children to stack up his benefit payments. He requested a larger council house to accommodate his growing family, but was denied due to lack of availability. Philpott publicly defended his lifestyle, expressing pride in his large family and dismissing critics. He blamed the council for not providing adequate housing and argued that as an unemployed person, he deserved more assistance from the government. Philpott tried to bring media attention to his housing situation. He appeared on The Jeremy Kyle Show in 2007, a program similar to The Jerry Springer Show. On the show, Philpott defended his lifestyle and unemployment, claiming he couldn't get a job due to media coverage and his criminal record. He became agitated when questioned about his parenting and job prospects, which led to an argument with the host, Jeremy, over his irresponsible lifestyle. On the show, insisted he had undergone a vasectomy. He defended himself in typically heated fashion, making an offensive gesture and telling the host, "Talk to that, pal. Talk to that." Philpott introduced his wife, Mairead, and his second wife, Lisa Willis, on the show, openly acknowledging his unconventional living arrangement. He claimed he didn't care what the public opinion was about his lifestyle and large family. Philpott also said he was prepared to divorce his wife to marry Lisa, and then divorce her simply so that she would not feel left out, because she did not share the Philpott family name. He went on to have 2 more kids after it, and was dubbed Britain's biggest scrounger. After it was revealed, he was raking in £25,000 a year in benefits. So Philpott's plan to gain public support for a larger house was unsuccessful.
We all work.
You don't work.
Oh, yes, I do work.
Yeah, I know your argument on this. Just give it to us. You say I look after my kids. What's wrong with a man looking after his kids other than a woman?
In 2007, Philpott appeared in an episode of a documentary series in which the then Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe spent a week with him and tried to persuade him to change his lifestyle. She found Philpott 3 jobs, one of which was with a barrel-making firm, but he did not turn up for work on the first day, and the job fell through. In the documentary, Philpott was shown to be living in a caravan in his garden, in which his wife and mistress would alternate in spending nights with him. The MP said that Philpott did not care about anyone, and that he used the word bitch to refer to both his wife and his mistress. She also noticed that none of his children sought affection from him. Although many people could not understand why the women in his life accepted their lot or even desired it, the general opinion was that his partners got on well with one another, but behind closed doors, the tensions between the throuple had reached a boiling point. He asked Mairead to divorce him 3 times so he could marry Lisa. In 2010, Philpott was given a police caution for slapping Mairead and dragging her outside by her hair, but he wasn't nice to Lisa either. Philpott hit her with a piece of wood, threw a hot cup of coffee at her, and prevented her from leaving the house or speaking with any men. In February 2012, Lisa had finally had enough of the toxic situation she was in. She decided to leave Philpott. She told Mairead she was taking her 5 children swimming, but instead moved in with her sister. This was the only way she could leave without any confrontation. 3 months after Lisa left, Philpott was still seething with anger and entangled in a rough custody battle over their 5 children. So he, along with his wife Mairead and a family friend named Paul Mosley, did the vilest thing you can think of. They planned to burn down their home with their own children inside and frame Lisa for it. The arson was scheduled for the day before a custody hearing between Lisa and Philpott. He wanted his children back, motivated by his greed for more benefit payments and the potential to get an even bigger council house. The plan involved Philpott and Mosley putting gasoline into the mail slot and setting fire to the house. Then, Philpott would swoop in and rescue his 6 children from the fire, making himself look like a heroic father and win the custody battle. To say that this idea was misguided would be an understatement. On May 11th, 2012 at 4 a.m., Philpott's plan to set fire to his house went tragically wrong. The fire spread much faster than anyone expected. It resulted in the deaths of 6 children, Jade, John, and Jack. Jesse and Jaden died at the scene, while their half-brother Dwayne died in the hospital 2 days later. All deaths were caused by excessive smoke inhalation. Fire investigators reported that temperatures in the upstairs bedrooms exceeded 500 degrees Celsius, leaving no chance of survival for anyone in those rooms. Police confirmed that the fire was deliberately started with petrol under the letterbox, classifying it as arson and officially stating that 6 children had been murdered. All of these children belonged to Philpott and Mairead, except Dwayne, who was his teenage son from previous relationship. Jade was only 10 years old, and she was very intelligent and well-regarded at school. 9 years, John was cheerful, smiley, and polite. And 5 years old, Jaden loved lots of cuddle from family and friends. Shy and bashful Jack, 7, was the quietest sibling and a delight to be around. Jesse, 6 years old, was described as a loud character in the family. Dwayne, the eldest victim at just 13, was described as a charming and caring young boy who was a protector for his younger brothers and sister. Nobody in the community had the slightest clue that a father could do such a thing. Many people who knew and socialized with Philpott and his family defended his lifestyle, saying negative representations of the area, and the man did not live up to the reality. One local, Bobby Sutherland, was inspired to set up a charity to help pay for the funerals of the 6 children, whom he claimed Philpott loved desperately. Fighting back tears as he stood in the street outside the fire-ravaged family home, he said at the time, "Yeah, they can slag him off, but he loved his kids. Yeah, you make mistakes, but you don't deserve that. Nobody deserves that." This shows just how good Philpott was at manipulating the people around him and maintaining his image as a good husband and father. At first, Lisa Willis and her brother-in-law were questioned, but they were quickly cleared of any suspicion. Meanwhile, witnesses reported that Philpott behaved strangely for someone who had recently lost several of his children and appeared to like the media attention. A mortuary manager said Philpott engaged in horseplay when he went to view his children's bodies, even putting a family liaison officer in a headlock during one visit. As part of their investigation, the police organized a press conference where Philpott and Moraid spoke. During this conference, Philpott thanked various people for their support and announced their decision to donate Dwayne's organs to save the life of another child. He expressed gratitude for the community's response and requested privacy for his family, asking that all questions be directed to the police. This press conference actually increased police suspicions. Philpott's behavior was notably inappropriate, including flirting with a female police officer. She claimed that he called her gorgeous and inferred he would like her to come back to his hotel.
But there's one thing I would request is please leave my family alone. If you've got any questions or anything at all, please don't come through me or my family. Please go to the police, because what's happening at the moment, you're disrupting what these officers are trying to do. So please, I beg you, leave us alone and let us.
The police found forensic evidence linking the Philpotts to the crime. A discarded petrol container and glove had been found near the house. And in November, forensic investigators discovered that the clothes of the Philpotts and Mosley had petrol on them. For further information, they placed a recording device in the police vehicle and their hotel room. The recorded conversations revealed incriminating statements from Philpott, including him saying it was his fault they lost their children and family. He can be heard saying, "You definitely sticking with the story. I didn't mean to do it on my life." Plus, the recording captured Philpott watching Moraid perform a sexual act on Paul Mosley, their accomplice. Philpott was heard telling his wife, "I'm proud of you because you didn't want to do it."
Tell me what you said to me. What you said about how many times I went up ladders.
I almost can't how many times I went up the ladders.
What did you say about me trying to get in?
You tried everything you could to get in. Like I said to him, I wanted to run through the flames up the stairs.
Would you cry when you were saying it? How bad?
Not really, really bad, but I did cry.
That's hysterical. It's my fault that our family's gone. It's my fault we lost our children. It's my fault we lost the other 5 children. It's my fault we lost Lisa. I should have seen it all coming up. It is my fault.
In police interviews, Mosley said he had sex with Moraid over a snooker table hours before the fire broke out. It's believed this act was encouraged by Philpott to keep Mosley loyal to their cause. Philpott even admitted having 3 or 4 sexual encounters with his wife and co-defendant Paul Mosley not long after his children's deaths. These recordings, along with other evidence such as an unused ladder found at the back of the house intended for the planned rescue, also implicated Philpott, Mairead, and Paul Mosley in the arson plot. On 28th of May, Philpott and Mairead were arrested on suspicion of murder. They were formally charged with murder 2 days later. On November 5th, 2012, Paul Mosley was also arrested on suspicion of murder after forensic examination revealed petrol on his clothing. The trial heard that Mosley had been bragging to a number of people about being a suspect, including on internet dating sites. Whatever Mosley's role, it seems that Philpott was keen to keep him on side, and police believe coercion may have been involved. In December, Mosley's charge was reduced to manslaughter. The murder charges against Philpott and Mairead were also eventually downgraded to manslaughter. Evidence showed that while they didn't intend to kill their children, they planned to frame Lisa for endangering the family in order to gain custody of her children. Their motivation was not solely revenge. More children meant more benefit money and potentially a larger house. On April 2nd, 2013, the couple, along with Paul Mosley, were found guilty of manslaughter for the deaths of the 6 children. Philpott received a life sentence with a minimum of 15 years in prison. Mairead and Paul Mosley each received 17-year sentences with a minimum of 8.5 years to be served. Mairead later appealed against her sentence, but judges ruled the original term reflected the immeasurable harm she had caused. Court of Appeal. Judges said petrol found on her clothes showed she had participated in setting the fire, which had not been a spur-of-the-moment plan. She had also lied after her arrest, the judges said, and continued to hide the truth during her trial. In her sentencing remarks, Mrs. Justice Thirlwall said it was clear the fire was Philpott's idea, but she said Mairead's children died because she put her husband first. In November 2020, Mairead was released after serving half her term. She was eligible to be released on license and taken by convoy to a halfway house. According to a source for The Sun, her convoy was like one given to a celebrity, rather than a mom who killed her 6 children. Mairead was also given a new identity for her protection. The Center for Crime Prevention described the release as appalling and called for killers to serve their full sentences for such crimes. Paul Mosley, too, was released from prison in May 2021 after serving half his sentence, but returned to prison in 2022 after breaching terms of parole. In November 2023, he was released again. The parole panel stated, "The panel was satisfied that imprisonment was no longer necessary for the protection of the public." So, while Mairead and Mosley are free, Philpott is still in prison, completing his minimum sentence of 15 years. Philpott was characterized as a monster, abusive to women and exploitative of the welfare system, who viewed children primarily as a source of income. Psychologist Glenn Wilson described Philpott as clinically a psychopath and exhibitionist with antisocial personality disorder.